dangerous. He's mad. I do so love custard. Or was it mustard?
We removed your brain.
Do you comprehend, commie animal? Get your act together. You're making us look like a collection of round earthers.
Vivisect me, please.
You think I don't know how crazy I sound? Of course I do. They made me just to torture me.
The things you do with our body are suicidally dangerous. You're a monster. A deranged monster.
In yesterday's episode, we met 5 floating brains in jars who are responsible for kidnapping us from the Mojave wasteland. We learned that they lobotomized us. They took our brain as well as our spine and heart. They then lost our brain, flushing it. It is now in the hands of their arch nemesis, Dr. Mobius. Before we can retrieve our brain, we must collect 3 pieces of technology for these mad scientists. The X2 radio antenna, some sort of stealth suit, and a new sonic frequency for our special energy weapon, the sonic emitter. To aid in our effort, the scientists gave us access to Dr. Mobius's former lab, the Sync, as well as a chip that we can install in the Sync's Central Intelligence Unit. This artificial intelligence is supposed to aid us on our quest. To install the chip, we simply activate the big round map in the middle of the primary chamber.
Salutations and felicitations, sir, and a most jocund welcome to the Sync. I am your electronic valet and household central processor. May I be of service, sir?
Sir? You are aware that I'm a woman, right?
Indubitably, sir, but it is with a great lugubriousness that I must disclose that my programmers installed only the masculine honorific, sir. Moreover, they neglected to enclose a parameter by which said honorific might be omitted altogether. Over my most strenuous of remonstrances, sir.
I think I'm gonna like this guy. So, you're some sort of artificial intelligence, right?
Regrettably not, sir. All modules in this habitat are synthetic personalities atop a mundane operating system. There is no intelligence here, sir.
Oh, I see. Personalities, but not necessarily intelligent ones. But wait a minute, you said all modules. Does that mean there are other personality modules here?
Indeed, sir. Though if sir's aim is to activate them, I lament to inform, sir, that most have been offline for some years. If sir were to ask my opinion, I should venture that sir is better off without them.
Well, why is that?
The other modules are rather erratic, sir. Their personality matrices are built on flawed logic and have not weathered the years well, sir. However, if sir is determined to inflict upon sir's self their dubious services, sir might locate backup personality disks elsewhere in the facility.
Well, can I access their functions without loading their flawed personalities?
Tragically, the core operating systems are also located on the personality tapes, sir. Once the tape is installed, sir may request I switch their dialectic interfaces off, and I shall oblige with great delectation. However, sir will still be required to locate and install a backup holotape to access their functionality.
Alright, so I have to find holotapes that have their personalities in order to use their functions, but I can always turn their personalities off from the Sync Central Intelligence Unit. Well, that's good to know. But why are there so many personality modules?
As I am given to understand, sir, this facility was once the property of a Dr. Mobius. He crafted the personality modules as part of a collection of experiments on the subject of machine-human interface. As to the reason for the unusual choices of devices to receive the modules, I cannot say.
What other kind of services do you provide?
In addition to managing the personality matrices of the other household utilities, I can provide sir with direct access to the commissary. Any goods sir might require may be purchased through my shopkeep interface, whence tiny robots shall deliver them forthwith to this very domicile.
Well, that is convenient. We can then use the Sync Central Intelligence Unit as a merchant. He has a decent inventory with about 4,000 backup caps. He sells a backup sonic emitter. Now, we have one already. This is the weapon that Dr. 8 sonjaculated into. But the reason it may be useful to get another is because each of these guns can only have one sonic frequency installed at a time. The frequency Dr. 8 gave us was the Revelation frequency, which, in addition to the gun's native abilities, an EMP blast with bonus damage versus robots and power armor, it also grants a critical strike paralysis. The other frequencies have different effects, which may make carrying more than one emitter pretty useful. At this early stage, he doesn't sell very good weapons or armor, but remember I said in my last video that I purposefully chose to enter Big Mountain without any armor or clothing so that I could carry everything back with me, so I went ahead and grabbed some leather armor while I was here. The Sync CIU can also repair, and he has a repair skill of 100. It's gonna cost a lot of caps, especially for low barter characters, but as long as we make sure our weapons do not break, we can keep everything fully repaired. The Sync CIU is brilliant. He greets us when we arrive and often talks to us as we walk by.
A most rapturous good morrow on your return to your domicile, sir. I trust you shall find things in order and the riff-raff contained.
Exploring this main circular chamber, we find an auto dock nearby, but when we try to activate it, we get a message. Personality files damaged or missing. Insert backup holotape to restore files. So it looks like this autodock is one of the many devices here that the Sync CIU told us could give us additional services if we first find their personality holotapes. Now, Dr. Klein told us that he threw those holotapes from the balcony of the Sync in a fit of rage after he got angry at Dr. Mobius. The holotapes have been scattered throughout the crater. So it looks like we've got to do a bit of exploring first. Also in this room is a reloading bench and a very handy cabinet directly above it. On the other side of the door leading to the balcony, we find a workshop with another cabinet directly above to store our supplies. Heading through the western doorway, and we arrive in some sort of garden lab, I suppose. There's a biological research station on a table to the left right next to a hot plate. We can use the hot plate much like a campfire, and we can store all of our aid items used for cooking in this refrigerator. To the right of the door, we see a sink. This, along with the biological research station, are more appliances that have personalities and additional functions once we find their holotapes. We find big tubs of dirt in this room, giving us the impression that at least at some point in the future we'll be able to grow our own crops from here. Heading out and going east, we find ourselves in a bit of a lounge. There's a disabled jukebox against the wall, another appliance that we don't have access to yet. We see a couch here. Looks like Dr. Klein didn't get rid of it despite his threats. And we find an Etotronic on the wall right above a table with a toaster and a footlocker. The toaster is yet another appliance with a personality. We find two doors against the eastern wall. The leftmost door was locked when we first arrived, but now it's open. Inside, we find 3 tanks. The first has our spine. Here is our spine. Without a brainstem to snap it onto, here it floats. Our back doesn't feel any different from the spine's removal. If anything, whatever was placed in there makes you feel stronger. And here the spine bobs in its liquid-filled tank. Right next to it is an empty tank. Based on the other tanks in the room, we can safely assume that this is where our brain would be floating. It's currently missing from both the tank and its proper place in our head, but we seem to be doing just fine without it. And directly next to this, we find a tank with our heart. This is our heart. Apparently, cranial surgery complications required its removal, and until our brain is returned, our heart can't be trusted to keep beating in our body. Our new heart seems to be working just fine, however. So it looks like we have to use the auto dock to reinstall our spine and heart. But before we can do that, we have to activate the auto dock with its personality holotape and retrieve our brain. We can't install our spine without a brain to attach to, and we can't install our heart without a brain to regulate it. Heading out and checking out the other room, we find what appears to be our bedroom. There's our first aid kit on the wall and a nice little safe where we can store all of our precious items. We find a number of containers, and on the floor next to the bed, we see a teeny tiny little Securitron named Muggy. What is this guy doing here? We can't talk to him. He is one of the many appliances here whose holotape we must find first. Dr. Mobius left behind some mentats and microfusion cells, and we also find some mad scientist scrubs. There are also 3 lockers here for organizing all of our gear. So this is our new home for the next several days. Now let's check out the gear that the mad scientists gave us. First is the sonic emitter. With the Revelation sound wave installed, it has a blue dial. It looks a whole lot like the pulse gun that we got from Vault 34 to complete Veronica's companion quest with the Brotherhood of Steel. This gun is the primary focus of our quests. Once we discover the sound frequency that allows us to tear down force fields with this gun, we will open up a whole bunch of new avenues of exploration within Big Mountain. Next is a scientist glove. We found this while exploring the private quarters of the think tank scientists. It's a mediocre little fist weapon, dealing only 21 damage when fully repaired, giving it a DPS of 28. There are unique versions of this fist weapon that we will find as we explore Big Mountain. Next is the K9000 Cyberdog gun, and as we equip it, it barks at us. And look at this magnificent weapon. It's like a scoped automatic Gatling gun. It has the picture of a little cartoon guard dog right on the front of it, and powering the thing is a brain. It looks like a dog's brain, I'm presuming. It says K9000 right on the weapon, and it has a triangular barrel, but best of all, it's got little floppy ears on the top of it. This is the weapon Dr. Klein was happy to give us after we pass the guns check during our conversation. Well, as a guns character with no other weapons available, I think I'll probably be making good use of this weapon during my time here. So far, we haven't found any good armor yet. It's because we haven't even left the think tank. But inside the sink, we did find the Mad Scientist scrubs. It only gives us a DT of 3, but it grants us +5 to science and +1 to intelligence. We also find simple scientist scrubs here, which have similar stats but only 1 less DT. We can use these to repair our mad scientist scrubs. These are important to find because as we continue talking with the mad scientists of the think tank, we will need to pass increasingly harder intelligence checks to gain access to some of the better endings to this DLC. Wearing mad scientist outfits and some of the glasses we went over yesterday, in addition to mentats, should give us the ability to pass nearly any intelligence check we are presented with later on. With that, we can organize our stuff into lockers and finally leave the sink to enter Big Mountain. As we do, we hear a familiar, threatening voice.
Intruder, you will not escape the eyes of my Robo-Scorpions or their pincers.
We see that the think tank and the sink reside in an impressive stone dome in the middle of this crater. And what is this? Grass? Is this actual blue grass? I didn't even think green, let alone blue grass, even still existed in this world. Well, this is a gorgeous revelation, but as we prepare to venture forward, we spot our first enemy. Off in the distance, milling about, is a lobotomite. This K9000 is remarkably effective, even at long range. When used in combination with steady, this thing is devastating. The existence of these lobotomites is disturbing. After all, lobotomite is what the think tank scientists called us, and many of these lobotomites are wearing the same sort of patient gown that we wore upon arrival. These poor bodies, what the scientists called skinvelopes, were likely abducted the same way we were. Or perhaps they were the subjects of experiments that the think tank have undertaken over the past 200 years. Maybe these walking aggressive bodies have been here for quite some time. But why did these lobotomites go murderously mad while we retained our sanity? Perhaps we shall uncover the answer as we continue. Thankfully, the lobotomites carry some pretty decent gear, including something called a proton axe. That noise the K9000 makes as we put it away is such a great touch. The blade of the proton axe looks like it's made out of some sort of blue force field. It's an incredibly powerful melee weapon, doing 50 damage, bringing the DPS up to 95.5. There are better melee weapons out there, but when you add the special effects this thing has, plus 20 damage against Big Mountain robots, and 50 to robots outside of Big Mountain, this becomes an extremely useful weapon. The lobotomites also drop some new headgear, lobotomite goggles, and the lobotomite mask. The lobotomite goggles give us a DT of 3, but they take away 2 intelligence. However, the lobotomite mask also gives us a DT of 3 with no intelligence penalty. Killing these lobotomites, we can gear up pretty fast. Now, the think tank gave us 3 objectives, and we can complete these in any order. Today, we will go to the X2 transmitter antenna array to retrieve the X2 antenna. This array is thankfully easy to find. All we have to do is walk due south of the think tank. We can head there 2 ways. The first is to go down some steps and to take the little concrete path directly to X2. Along the way, we can take advantage of one of the unique looting options in this DLC. There are tiny little electrical boxes marked with a big yellow triangle near to lights and other various objects. These will sometimes contain random hidden items. If we go down this path to the antenna array, we find 2 wrecked trucks, each of which have boxes filled with all sorts of good loot. But as we get closer, we stumble upon a slew of lobotomites, some whom are using long-ranged weapons. It's important to explore the areas to the sides of this path because we find a lot of wonderful gear. For example, going west of the path, we find a little bit of a sunken, muddy nuclear field. In this nuclear mud, we'll find boxes, crates, and even a locker. Inside the locker, I found a suit of combat armor. This allowed me to replace the leather armor I bought from the sink. And good armor is incredibly important. I don't know if it was just my game, but it seemed like these lobotomites not only could see me from great distances, but seemed to respawn incredibly quickly. You saw me kill all of those lobotomites just a moment ago. I did not travel that much farther south, and I got swarmed by another group of them. Even after looting the combat armor, I died 3 times just trying to find my way to X2. However, the good news of being swarmed by lobotomites is we have the opportunity to collect quite a lot of gear. I found one of the better headpieces in this DLC, the lobotomite mask and goggles, which has a DT of 5. Much better than just the mask or the goggles, but it does cost us 2 intelligence. The lobotomites will drop weapons that suit almost any playstyle. I was relieved when finally I looted a hunting rifle from one of the corpses. Since on this character I specialized in guns and I have the cowboy perk, this was exactly what I was waiting for. This game rewards us for our curiosity. We'll find many little hidden stashes of loot on top of rocks, small mountains, tucked behind buildings, and off in the darkest corners of places. The alternative way to go straight to X2 is to travel along the big green pipe, snaking from the think tank all the way there. But this isn't any safer because the pipe is booby-trapped with proximity mines. Although we do find containers and other minor loot along the way. Now, while traveling along the pipes, it is harder for enemies to reach us, but enemies with ranged weapons can still pick us off, and it's much easier for them to see us. So I prefer to explore these pipes after all of the nearby enemies are already dead. Whichever way we choose, at last we reach the X2 transmitter antenna. But as we get close, we get attacked by a new kind of enemy. Something called a Y-17 trauma override harness. That's a strange name for whatever creature this is. They wield really powerful energy weapons, and they're extremely difficult to kill. They appear to be skeletons inside spacesuits? What on earth could possibly explain walking skeletons in spacesuits? I'm sure whatever it is, it's horrible. Once the area is finally clear, we can, at last, open the door to the X2 transmitter antenna array. Once inside, our quest log updates. Climb to the satellite dish and retrieve the X2 antenna. As soon as we open the door, we see Protectron guards. This gives us an opportunity to try out the revelation frequency on our sonic emitter, and it's pretty decent. The stun effect will lock robots in a state of paralysis. If we're able to keep fire on these things, we can whittle them down without them having an opportunity to fight back. However, the damage is less than I'm used to, probably because this character is not spec'd into energy weapons. We find ourselves in a large vaulted room with a stairway leading up the tower. On this bottom floor, we find a few containers and a lot of scrap, and lying on a table leaning against a coffee machine in the southeast corner of the room, we find a holotape, Sync Project Light Switch 01. This is the personality holotape for one of the appliances. Apparently a light switch. Looks like in the sink, even the light switches have personalities. Well, that'll be fun to install. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save all of these appliance personalities for a dedicated video. We'll go through all of them, including the locations where we pick them up in that video. So stay tuned for that. After looting some energy ammunition on a shelf, we can ascend the tower using the stairs. On this catwalk level, there are plenty of containers to loot, and we see some sort of gas coming out of one of these air vents, quickly rising to the ceiling. It doesn't affect us in any way, thankfully. There's a workbench in the corner, next to a cabinet with more random loot inside. But that's it for this level, so taking the stairs up to the next level, we can get rid of a Protectron through a door. Oh, this gun is so much faster than that sonic emitter. And we see two paths forward. We can go through the door where the Protectron was, or we can climb up a ladder. Let's go through the doorway first. We loot a lot of containers, and we head out a door which leads us to Big Mountain.
What terrors does Big Mountain hold for the intrepid seeker? Really? Does anyone know? I'm at a loss.
Well, if you're at a loss, I'm at a loss. I have no idea what's in store for me. Hopefully they're not that terrible. We find ourselves on some sort of catwalk that goes all the way around the satellite. We see a stairway leading out to the nearby mountain. Looks like this is the way out. And lining this crater, we see these tall towers with big bulbous bulbs at the top. This must be the fence, the thing Dr. Klein told us about that's preventing us from leaving. At the end of this catwalk, we find a couple of containers. Well, this obviously wasn't the right direction, so heading back inside, we can instead go up the ladder. This brings us to the satellite dish. We see a couple of tiles missing from the dish, but these have been repaired with some sort of force field. Looks like the very kind of force field that we're trying to find a sonic frequency to be able to destroy. Following a trail of scrap electronics, we can climb up some scaffolding to reach the very top, where we can take the X2 antenna.
Trying to steal the X2 transmitter array antenna, are you? You won't succeed. Not if my lethal Robo-Scorpions have any say in the matter.
Oh no, not Robo-Scorpions! Well, Dr. Mobius has it in for us. Peering over the dish, we don't see any Robo-Scorpions. Maybe we can find a way to sneak out. Going back to the very middle of the dish, we can access the hatch to go down a ladder, whereupon we find Robo-Scorpions!
Go on, minion! Steal them in the name of all that is Mobius!
These guys are much more resistant to my hunting rifle, so pulling out the sonic emitter revelation.
It's my Robo-Scorpion, will you? Are you sure you scanned something?
We can blast them into submission. We see that Dr. Mobius speaks to his Robo-Scorpions while they attack. He even has something unique to tell them when we successfully hide.
All right, everyone, calm down. Might have been a blip.
I can't tell if Mobius is actively talking to them or if this is some sort of recording. But anyway, we have a plethora of Robo-Scorpions to fight through as we descend the tower. After clearing the tower, we can exit through either of the doors. I wanted to exit out that top door. And as we exit, Dr. Klein congratulates us.
Well done, Lobotomite. Soon the technologies will be safe.
But Dr. Mobius has Robo-Scorpions for us even out here. Thankfully, by this time, night had fallen, and I was able to sneak past these Robo-Scorpions under cover of darkness. Now, after waiting for daybreak, while trying to wind my way back to the sink, I managed to get a little too close to the invisible barrier fence. It zapped me back to the balcony, but we see that we fulfilled half of a two-part challenge. Outer space. Dare to venture beyond the Big Mountain's perimeter more than once. I completed the challenge while exploring a construction site much later. There I found a downed pylon, and I thought, well, maybe if this guy was downed, I could somehow sneak past the invisible barrier. But no, as I got close, even though this was knocked down, it still warped me back to the sink. But upon completing the challenge, we gain around 100 experience. Now that we're free of the threat of those horrible Robo-Scorpions, we can take a closer look at the X2 antenna we just retrieved. Remember, Dr. Klein told us that he didn't need any of these physical pieces of technology, he just needed the blueprints, the schematics of them, which would automatically be downloaded and transferred to him once we retrieved them. So we can use this X2 antenna as a melee weapon. It's not terribly impressive. It has 65 damage with a DPS of 70, but it does plus 50 damage against robots, whether they are in or outside of Big Mountain, and plus 20 damage to enemies in power armor. It's a great weapon to use against Robo-Scorpions because it tends to knock them back with each hit. However, the recommended strength level to use it is 7. If our strength is not that high, it attacks incredibly slowly. So, one piece of technology down, 2 more to go. But that doesn't mean we're even remotely close to uncovering the mysteries of the Big Empty. We still have to uncover the myriad of sonic frequencies for the sonic emitter, all of the other personalities for the appliances in the sink. We will uncover the pre-war history of the experiments that went on here. And while we're here, we will stumble upon the trail of an old friend. But in tomorrow's episode, we will get to know each of the peculiar personalities that make up the think tank. Klein, Dala, Boris, O, 8. Who are they? What drives them? What are their histories? And what will we discover when we ransack the homes they used to live in when they were human? To find out, be sure to tune into tomorrow's episode. I've got a brand new shirt in the shop, folks. Away, true to Kaiser. That's right, all you Legion fans. I've been hearing your cries, and I've got a shirt in the shop just for you. On the front, we have the Legion Bull, and on the back, we have an iconic Legion mask with the words, Retribution. You can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with episode 3.